Hello and welcome to the penultimate episode of a podcast about something, where each week we dive deep into whatever it is we find interesting. I'm your host, Kalvin, and joining me from the edge of a cinematic universe, it's your co-host, Nick Richardson.
I'm from the outside looking in, and it's not looking good.
As we said, this is our penultimate episode of a podcast about something, the second to last one. Next week will be the grand finale of all grand finales of a podcast about something. And being our second to last episode, it is also our final movie superlatives episode. We've done a lot of these.
We've done a shitload of them, and I loved like 99% of them.
Well, which ones didn't you like?
I just don't give anything 100%, Kalvin.
We started movie superlatives back in August of 2018 and have done one a month since then. So there are a lot to fall back on. And what movie superlatives is a monthly series where we take a different type of movie and give out some made up awards to these movies that fall under that umbrella of whatever the type is. We've done things like road trip movies, time travel movies, kung fu movies, Will Ferrell movies. So sometimes we get really, into the nitty gritty of it. Sometimes it's a little bit broader. And we've done a lot, so go back and check. You can find one every 4 or 5 episodes in the back catalog. There is an episode of Movie Superlatives. If you like movies and you like what we do with this one, I highly suggest you go back and check out some of the old ones. But we give out 5 different awards, and we can't give more than one movie multiple awards, and we can't give multiple awards to the same movie, if that makes sense.
Makes perfect sense.
I said it perfectly one time, and then I've forgotten how to say it.
Legitimately been like one time.
So what is that? 2 years, that's 12 months, 24 months, and another 5 months. So 29 of these episodes, I have gotten the outline of how we give the awards out. I've gotten it perfectly right one time. So that's good. Good shooting percentage.
You're shooting ridiculously well.
Some Drew Holiday stuff right there.
Shaq at the foul line stuff right there.
Shout out Milwaukee Bucks, NBA champions.
Yeah, go kidding. Go kidding. No kidding.
So for this final Movie Superlatives episode, we are doing franchise killing movies. So these are any movies that caused the, at the time, contemporary rendition of any franchise to die. Whether they just decided, okay, we've killed this and we need to start over, we need to reboot, or if, they ended at the top of their game. Either way, the franchise ended. For some reason.
It's over.
It's over.
Over.
And so there will be no Fast and Furious, no MCU. Those things are still going strong.
They're hot right now.
Yeah.
I mean, they're family tales, if you know what I mean.
I did put the qualifier in the notes. I hope you notice this, that each Star Wars trilogy counts as its own franchise because each one kind of technically ended and we never needed another phase to validate the previous one. Each one kind of feels like its own contained story, but also part of a bigger thing.
Yeah, George Lucas and Disney. Fuckers.
I'm glad we have more, but we never needed any more,
I'm glad for like 18 minutes of the other movies that we got.
We'll get there when we get there. And we're going to stay away from the MCU because that definitely has not died. I mean, You could maybe say like the Iron Man franchise within the MCU is dead, but we also just did an MCU episode 2 weeks ago. So if you want our takes on the MCU, go listen to that.
Also a hot episode.
Yeah, very good. Hansel, so hot right now.
So hot.
I don't remember. Oh, the VCR kids did an episode on Zoolander a couple weeks ago and got it stuck back in my head.
Son of bitches.
Love Zoolander. Zoolander 2? Not so much. Killed the franchise.
Never watched it.
You never watched Zoolander 2 or Zoolander 1?
Zoolander 2.
No.
Come on.
Zoolander 1 is iconic.
I was going to say, what kind of piece of shit do you think I am?
So, like I said, we give out 5 awards, and we give out the best and worst version of each award. So the best version is called the superlative, and we call the worst versions the sucklatives. And we are giving out the best and worst franchise hero, the best and worst reboot, the best and worst overall franchise, the best and worst cliffhanger for a sequel that never came. A lot of these franchises, they die, but they think they're going to get another sequel, and the sequel never actually happens because it ended up actually being shitty or the audience didn't like it, so they moved on and did something else. And the final category is the best and worst franchise ending. And again, that's whether they just cut it off early or they actually brought it to a good close.
It's a weird thing.
Yeah. So do you have anything to say about your feelings on movies that kill franchises before we get into the awards?
Really? The fact that most of the time it's studio meddling. So I try not to hold it against a lot of these movies, but it's really fucking hard sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, some movies are also just bad.
Fucking terrible.
And some franchises need to die, you know, and they just won't let them. No, never. So, all right, before you continue with your blasphemousness, let's move on to our best franchise heroes. They have to be at least featured in the movie that killed the franchise to be considered here. So who is your best franchise hero?
This was super easy. Spider-Man.
Yeah. I have the same thing. So Peter Parker and Spider-Man form. Of course. I have the Raimi trilogy of Spider-Man.
100%. Okay. The third installment, man, that...
it has its good qualities. I'm not here to denigrate Spider-Man 3.
Name one.
I could name like 50, but...
Hit me with just one.
Let me think here. The way MJ... No, I'm trying to figure out the way to say it. The way Mary Jane feels kind of brushed aside by Peter... because people are finally liking Spider-Man and her career is kind of going down the toilet. I thought they portrayed that very well, and how like Spider-Man has taken him over and he's kind of forgot what's important a little bit. I thought that's very good.
To slap the shit out of her too. That was not good.
Well, yeah, that was the symbiote though. We're gonna blame that on the symbiote.
We'll blame the jazz on the symbiote too.
I mean, dancing Peter Parker. It's rough, but there's an argument to be made for it. I can make that argument if I need to. I don't feel like I need to. I feel like I made it when we did a Spider-Man episode sometime in the past.
I recently had this argument with a coworker, and it boiled down to, I get what they're trying to portray. It's just stupid.
So, for the listeners who don't want to go all the way back, it's not that he is now cool and what he's doing is cool. He is doing what the nerd Peter Parker thinks would be cool, but the problem is he's still a nerd deep down, so the thing that he thinks is cool is not actually cool, but he thinks he's really cool doing it, and you know that it turns out rough for him, but I think on a level it's supposed to be bad. It's supposed to be cringy because it is someone who is not cool doing their best impression of what they think a cool person would do, and being very bad at it.
Totally valid points. I totally agree with you. I just think it's stupid. I hate it. And you can't take that away from me.
So why do you like Spider-Man from Spider-Man 3 / Spider-Man 2 / Spider-Man?
I used to love it, obviously, because it's Spider-Man. It was one of the first, comic book movies that did a really good job. And it was really neat seeing, my dad super excited about it, too. But as I've aged and rewatched these movies, they're a lot better than I even gave them credit for as a younger person. They're well made, fucking amazing casting of Tobey Maguire in the first one. The second one, to an extent, I think he kind of aged out by the third one.
I mean, he aged out in the first one. He was way too old to be a high school student, but he's still great.
Was too.
Yeah, he was still great as Peter Parker and Spider-Man. It's just they shouldn't have put him in high school.
Oh no, I mean. It's believable-ish in that first one.
And it's like 2 scenes in high school anyway, so it's not that big a deal. Maybe 3.
The costume was insanely cool. When you look back at it. They really go hard with, Getting some crotch shots in there a couple times.
On some Zack Snyder with Wonder Woman shit.
Yep. Just really creepy shit. Like inside you're just like, man, they're really lingering on this shit. Honey, I'm getting something to eat. Fuck.
I feel like Tobey Maguire as Peter Parker kind of fully embodied the idea of with great power comes great responsibility. Every time he had to be a hero throughout these movies, he did it, and he kind of carried that legacy of Spider-Man on in a way that he needed to. And like you said, this kind of kicked off the superhero push. Blade did it first, then X-Men came in, did it a little bit better, but I don't think we have the state of superhero movies that we have today if it wasn't for this Spider-Man trilogy. Like, if this Spider-Man trilogy didn't come in and just blow people's socks off from step 1 to step 50, then I don't think we have what we have now.
Oh, absolutely, man. And I put a lot of emphasis on the fact that, that was something my dad really enjoyed. He was huge into comics. So that's the demographic you want to get. I mean, especially it was the first movie that really, X-Men did it to a certain extent, and then Spider-Man really sealed the deal. Like, my grandparents thought that movie was cool. Like, they fucking hated everything. They watched Passion of the Christ on Christmas. Ugh. That's what they enjoy. Like,
we watched that. So I went to Catholic school and we had to watch that in like one of my religion classes one time. I fell asleep.
I had to sit in the front row.
I know the story. I'm good.
By myself because we showed up late to the theater. Thanks, Dad. And they were handing out tissues. And then it was me, him, and my stepmom, and they got to sit together. He's like, "Sorry, man, whatever." It's front row.
It's all of the walking of Lord of the Rings with none of the fun magical stuff.
Yeah, literally none of it. And some scariness in there, and just really.
We don't even get Jesus.
Shit.
We don't even get Jesus doing any of his miracles. Like, come on.
So we're gonna beat the fuck out of this dude for 3 hours. No one gets shit from this except tears.
Yeah, we're only gonna stop the walking, not for magic and like invisible bad guys attacking, but we're gonna stop the walking just to like have somebody new beat the shit out of him for 10 minutes. it's and then he's gonna walk some more and get the shit beat out of him again 10 more minutes later.
Then they're gonna.
I don't know how we got the Passion of the Christ, but Spider-Man.
I don't either. But anyway, so because my grandparents who are nuts.
Oh yeah.
But it really did a great job of capturing that demographic because he portrayed being the underdog so well and just being like you said the nerd, like kind of nerdy, quiet people I can speak for myself. I was very much that way, timid, kind of pushed over by life, and then you hopefully grow out of it. But Tobey Maguire did a great job. The writing was fantastic. The atmosphere was even better. It had just enough like pulp and corniness to make it endearing. But at the same time, it had pretty solid action and decent special, for the time, fantastic special effects. And overall, it's just a well-rounded series of 2 movies. And then the third just took a dump all over it.
I don't think it took a dump. I think there are redeeming qualities within Spider-Man 3. I also think that these Spider-Man movies laid the blueprint for something like Batman Begins and The Dark Knight to happen. They showed that you don't have to go over the top with the superheroes and the powers and the villains and all of that. While, Spider-Man is not an incredibly grounded character because he can stick to walls and he has fucking webs coming out of his arms, the villains were always pretty grounded. They were pretty real to life. And the action was always kind of more realistic. And I think like Blade was kind of going the opposite direction there. X-Men were going the opposite direction. If you look at Blade 2, Blade 3, and X-Men 2 and X-Men 3, they were continuously getting more outlandish and farther away from realistic. And you saw it with the last 2, the Schumacher Batman movies, same thing there. And then Spider-Man kind of brought everything back down to earth and made this grounded superhero movie that then Batman Begins and The Dark Knight could kind of build off of.
My grandma took me to not The Dark Knight, but Batman Begins.
I didn't like Batman Begins when I first saw it. It's a little boring.
What is?
Takes a while to get into Batmaning. Hey, Spider-Man. You don't call my movie boring.
there's redeeming qualities about Spider-Man 3. Batman Begins is boring. You are just full of hot takes tonight.
No, I'm here to say, yeah, Batman Begins, definitely boring. Had to train with the League of Shadows for 2 hours. Come on. Nobody wants to see that shit. Where are the bats? Where are the bats?
You pulled me out of my fury. Thank you.
We couldn't do a final movie superlatives without having a Batman appearance. Thank you, Batman, for always showing up when we need you most. You're not the hero we deserve, but you are the hero we need.
I just need to have you be a character in my story, doing that voice the whole time.
I don't know about the whole time. You're going to have to give me like several weeks of dialogue.
6 lines. And
yeah, I can do just like, 3 minutes at a time.
Do you need a drink or something? What's wrong with you?
No! All right, so let's move on to our worst franchise heroes. I don't think it's going to be Batman for anybody. Who did you have for your worst franchise hero?
Okay, so you got to roll with me here. They're the hero of their own story. And that's the Joker from Suicide Squad. In the whole DCEU continuity.
Is that a franchise?
Universe. I would call it a franchise because.
How is it a franchise? There's only one movie, and it was bad.
Mm-hmm. And Batman was in 3 movies, so I would call that a franchise. It's all in the interconnected world. And if you got Justice League,
but Suicide Squad didn't kill that franchise. I am not counting
Suicide Squad fucking shit all over that franchise. Think about it. Ben Affleck.
Well, but then it's still there were 4 more movies after Suicide Squad.
What movies?
Batman v Superman was after Suicide Squad, wasn't it? Aquaman was definitely after. Shazam was definitely after, and 3 different versions of Justice League were after it.
I'm not saying the DCEU as a whole was halted, even though for the most part it kind of fucking was. If Aquaman didn't make $1 billion, it would have been shut the fuck down too. But think about it. Ben Affleck is no longer around as Batman. Henry Cavill, no longer
I am not
Superman.
disagreeing that the
You're getting a soft reboot of the movie already.
Right. So the Flash is what's going to actually end up killing the DCEU because they're rebooting everything, doing Flashpoint or whatever the hell, their Crisis on Infinite, Flashpoints, whatever the hell they're trying to do.
Flashpoint, we did a podcast on it, Kalvin.
We did. Go back and check that out. I disagree that Suicide Squad killed the DCEU, but you've already picked it, so you got to go with it now.
Because it did. It was so bad. It was so bad. And think about it. They built 90% of the hype for those follow-up movies off the trailers of Suicide Squad. Because they're like, oh, sick, these projects are going to be dope. Look at the trailers for Suicide Squad. People were decently excited for Jared Leto's infamous Joker.
I think you were just looking for a reason to make fun of him again.
That is the first time I mentioned that. Infamous is not a hot take. I was like, man, this dude's a real piece of shit. I'm not throwing low blows. I'm just stating facts. He was terrible in that movie.
I'm not disagreeing. I think I don't know, and I've been on record with this, that is entirely his fault. They gave him a shit script to work with, and they took out all of his meaty parts out of it. And then, so him doing his weird thing never paid off fully. It was just like, let's throw some scenes in where he's being super weird and never like get to the point of why he's so weird or what that complete weirdness leads to, because that's what the Joker is. It's not that he just shows up for 5 minutes and is weird. It's either something caused him to be weird and that's traumatic and we need to see that, which is, I mean, they made the Joker movie based on that, or his weirdness has to lead to something like some not elaborate plan, because he's not really like a planner, but like there has to be a payoff in some evil scheme that he's got going, and just none of those things happened. And that's the movie's fault more than it's Joker's fault in the movie.
I disagree. I think it's conjecture. And I also think it's hearsay. Because, I mean, I've heard 2 sides of the same coin. That he was a big problem. That he, his version of the story is, oh, no, I didn't send in any of that nasty shit to my coworkers.
Oh, I think Jared Leto is also a very weird dude and did some questionable shit.
Right. So when he says, I think when they cut out all my meaty parts, I'm not really buying what he's selling.
Even if they cut nothing from him, what they gave him to do in the movie was not worthwhile to have him in the movie. Like they didn't give him anything to do. They just were like, here, show up, be weird for 2 minutes at a time, 4 different times, and then fuck off. Like,
do you really think you need the Joker, like as a just
no,
having him for that little bit of nonsense? That's
correct.
not enough to pull in an audience. Like you don't need to have a coherent story for the Joker. You can just have him for 5 seconds. That's the whole point of the Joker, like you just said. It doesn't really matter what he's doing. It's the Joker. People are going to show up for it regardless.
Right, and they marketed it as this is the Joker's movie, and then he was in it for like 12 minutes, doing just showing up and being weird for 4 3-minute stretches, and then he's just gone. And so when you market a movie as like, this is a new take on Joker, he's weird, he's out there, and he's got something going on, but then he doesn't actually have anything going on, and he just shows up and is weird for 12 minutes, then you got sold something that and instead your villain is actually Enchantress, like swiveling her hips for
that was terrible too.
20 minutes with a sky beam. Like that's you had a villain right there. You could have used Joker as your villain, and instead you chose Enchantress. So either he needs to not be in the movie, or you need to focus on him more.
Well, I don't think he was the point at all. I think it was Harley Quinn.
Correct.
And he and herself, they're just extensions of each other. So I think he was there to give her something to do along with this
She
mission.
had something to do. She had to stop Enchantress.
Right, but you said they need a lot to do, correct? That is a lot to do. How else are you going to get a romantic triangle between the Joker, her, and fucking Will Smith? They're trying to nail all the heads. It's sloppy.
Yeah,
that's
the point I'm making. I'm making the same point that the movie was sloppy. And that's not his fault that the movie was sloppy. They built a sloppy movie and threw him into it.
Dude, Philip Seymour Hoffman has been in terrible movies, but he has never been terrible.
Yeah, Jared Leto's not the same person, though. Like,
I understand that. I'm just using that as a reference for the fact that you can still be good in with nothing to do. It was just a bad take. And it wasn't good. That's why I think it killed the franchise. I mean, if they already got a reboot with some of the same characters, roughly, they're basically reinterpretations of their characters, and you don't have pretty much anybody else involved with that movie coming back in any way, shape, or form. You know what I mean?
I guess. We're just going to have to agree to disagree and move on, I think. Otherwise, we're just going to be arguing for the next hour on this point.
No, this is a serious point. I need to take this home. I need to drive it until I beat that horse to death.
So my worst franchise hero is from Twilight Breaking Dawn Part 2.
Go on.
Bella. Is that her name? Right? I think so. Kristen Stewart's character. Like, she saves the world. How can you even
say she's the hero, Kalvin? How do you know?
How is she not? She's the main character of the movie.
First off,
she saves the world with her alien vampire werewolf baby.
It's heroin.
Fine.
Heroin.
She's the worst heroine. But I'm not letting Edward Cullen off easy either, because he's just as bad. So as both of them together are bad.
They're fucking awful. But I never watched that second part.
Kristen Stewart's just awful. I don't think you need to watch the second part to understand that she's awful in all of these movies. Every time she's on screen, you actively want to turn any of these movies off, and I don't think that is a great quality for the face of your franchise.
I just want to throw shit at her.
That's like hiring Chris Paul to be the face of your franchise. Like, nobody wants to watch Chris Paul all the time and be their number one player.
But that people do, though.
I know. Well, people fucking watch Twilight. I saw all 4 parts.
People
it's bad, dude.
Twilight.
5 parts.
Yeah, I was 5 parts. Isn't it 5? Yeah. They saw Harry Potter and they're like, "Fuck, we gotta get on that train."
Yeah, I mean, she just never has any energy or like inspirational qualities throughout any of these movies. Like I said, Edward Cullen is just as bad. I'm not trying to just hate on the woman here or anything like that, but at least Edward Cullen had some cool vampire superpowers going on. Bella didn't have any of that for most of this franchise. And then, she finally gets him and gives birth to the alien vampire werewolf or whatever the fuck it is. And, and then that's it. She sucked.
She's not good. I'll just hate on her with you. Just Kristen Stewart literally has no emotion on her face.
No.
She just moves her mouth, like her eyes, or she looks like a World War I veteran.
I hate it because they keep putting her in what seem to be good projects, and I'm like, okay, well maybe she'll finally be good this time, and then I watch it and it's the same, and it's awful.
Antsy, quiet. Ugh.
Yeah.
I dread seeing her on the screen. But yeah, I mean that's fair. That's fair. I don't think it really killed the franchise because that shit was going strong.
I mean,
it's the end of the story.
But so I don't think you're understanding what I mean by franchise killers, and maybe we should have had this conversation more before we started recording. But the franchise literally stopped after that movie. Like there were no more movies after that because that was the end of the franchise. So her in that movie killed it didn't murder the franchise. It just died of old age. It's just when franchises stop for any reason and start over.
Okay.
Or move on, whatever.
I'm laughing at your franchise killer. It's not murder. The franchise.
It doesn't have. It could be murder, but it doesn't have to be.
Synonym for kill. No, I get what you're saying.
All right, so let's move on to the best reboot of a franchise. I go first here. I went with Rocky Balboa into Creed.
Man, Rocky Balboa was like a reboot, and then Creed was a reboot of the reboot.
Yeah, that's true. But Rocky Balboa at least was like tied back to the first 5 Rockies, and Creed was a little bit, but they were really trying to do something new with Creed, And by 2015, most of the world, we had moved on from Rocky, and rightfully so. We had Rocky Balboa in 2006. It was fine, but it wasn't great, They first ended it badly with Rocky 5. They tried that one time. Wasn't good enough. So they bring back Rocky Balboa, and it's still not good enough. So now Stallone's still continuing to age. Nobody is necessarily looking for more Rocky content in 2015. But then Creed comes and totally redeemed everything.
Totally redeemed yourself. Yeah.
Creed was just everything that we never knew we wanted in a boxing movie. Michael B. Jordan as Apollo Creed's son is there. Ryan Coogler directing. Old man Rocky training Michael B. Jordan. It revitalized this franchise that had died 3 times in 3 different ways. And then it revitalizes it in a way that kept everyone actually wanting more. Reboots often don't live up to what the originals were. And they definitely don't usually lend themselves to further franchise development. Some do, a lot of them don't. A lot of reboots fall flat. But Creed, I think, absolutely pulled off everything that it needed to. And Creed 2 wasn't very good, but if they make another one, I'm going to be there for it.
Aren't they making another one?
I think they are.
I'm pretty sure they are. But I think I read that Sylvester Stallone just won't be in it.
Yeah, he's done. He said he's done.
I don't hope so. He's like 75.
Yeah.
He's still shredded, though. He's been more shredded than I ever have been in my life.
He'll be back one more time. Like Creed 7, he's going to be in it, and he'll be boxing a fucking robot or something. Who knows?
He'll be a robot?
Yeah, probably. It'll be Terminator, Rocky crossover. Skynet will have found a way. Instead of just like killing people, they'll just be building boxers.
Beat the shit out of him to death. The Balboa 1100. B 1100. Wouldn't that be something? It's just shooting out taglines.
I'm sure it's coming. I'm sure it's coming. They're going to hear this and they're going to be like, whoa, that would totally work.
Tim Cook's like,
Skynet's already listening anyways.
Don't you mean Genesis?
No, that shit doesn't count. What is your best reboot?
Rise of the Planet of the Apes.
Yeah?
Okay, I thought you were going to be like, that's not a reboot.
No, that's a reboot.
Anyway, so Rise of the Planet of the Apes. Have you ever watched the 1968 original?
Yes. I have watched 4 of the 5. I never got, so it was like right after my first daughter was born. I would come home and I would watch them in the afternoon before my wife got home from work because I would get home earlier. And like my daughter would sit there with me and watch them, and then whatever happened, I just never got to the last one, and have never 7 years later I haven't gone back to it. So, but yes, I've seen most of them.
You're not missing it. The original was
they're enjoyable.
Solid.
They're not good, but they're fluffy, good background movies. Like they're solid. Just like throw it on and.
If I'm like snoozing with my kid, yeah, totally.
Great snooze movie for sure.
Yeah. If I'm just chilling on the couch, the 68 version I really enjoyed. That ending is fantastic. It's just a well-written movie. And then you get Beneath the Planet of the Apes, Escape from the Planet of the Apes, Conquest, and Battle of the Planet of the Apes, all within a 5-year period.
That's the one I've never seen.
That's insane. 5 movies in 5 years.
I mean, with such great effects too.
I mean, they're just beautiful. And then you get that shiny, beautiful turd in 2001.
Thanks, I need to go back and rewatch that too.
Ugh.
I know it's bad, but
it's so bad.
I saw it when it came out in theaters, and I was 12, maybe 12 or 13. So like, I don't really have the only thing I remember. Literally, the only thing I remember from it is Mark Wahlberg showing up with the Lincoln Memorial part. Like that's the only thing I remember.
Monkey.
From it. Yeah. I
remember the sexual tension as an 8-year-old with Helena Bonham Carter's monkey.
Yeah,
no, like, this is making me feel things. This is weird.
Yeah, you could show me any scene other than the Abraham Lincoln one from that movie, and I would have no idea that that's what it's from. Other than like, there's obviously man-sized apes, and I could probably guess, but I wouldn't know.
Wear armor and ride horses and shit. Very odd. I think Tim Burton, you could tell he did not want to be there. Like it came through, and Mark Wahlberg obviously is just not a good lead for most movies. No. He's got a very specific niche. See The Happening. Also, hot pile of shit. But I
thought you were saying that was his niche.
Oh yeah, no, yeah, terrible, awful fucking movies. But then they nailed it in 2011. I mean, I remember going to see. I was like, oh, James Franco, nah.
I like James Franco.
I didn't really see this as his type of movie. Like, I mean, he's also kind of a niche actor. He's a bit of an airhead. Very much so that same character. He's incredibly smart, Spider-Man. Actually. I don't care.
But I'm just not going to have you out here, libeling James Franco. I got to set the record straight.
This reboot was, I mean, Andy Serkis really killed it as Caesar. Mm-hmm. He obviously has a knack for mocap, and there's a lot of talent there. The storyline was good. It was just a good time for it. It was a neat little sci-fi movie that it was kind of a breath of fresh air after. Man, the 2000s had a lot of shit movies, like shit rom-com action movies. I mean, that was like all the fucking rage, and then you get this. I don't know
what you mean by shit. I think you mean great rom-com action movies.
I mean top flight. Mr. and Mrs. Smith, I will watch you every night.
Yeah. No, Rise of the Planet of the Apes is a great reboot. I think they hit the nail on the head with what they were trying to do. The next two weren't as good. I think Rise was the best out of the 3. I know a lot of people will argue that the third one was.
I thought all 3 were.
But I thought all 3 like good. Held their place where they needed to be.
They totally didn't tank the franchise.
No,
I mean, they left it on a good note.
Yeah, and I think I like Rise more because the human story being told in Rise was better than. I know War of the Planet of the Apes is one, and what's the middle one?
I thought that was War of the Planet of the Apes.
Maybe. Now I gotta look it up. Dawn of the Planet of the Apes was the middle one, and War is the third one.
Whenever he's got a gun, that's dope.
I think America. Dawn is the most forgettable in the middle there, and then War was pretty good. But yeah, I liked seeing the beginnings of it, and I think that's why I watched like all the 60s and 70s ones, was because they start right in the middle of it. But then as you go through those 5 movies, they tell you how the world got this way and the causes behind it. And that's the kind of stuff I like, is the world building around these things. So I think Rise,
Yeah.
right out of the gate, kind of gave you that, rather than doing the slow. Like, it would have been one thing to start with War of the Planet of the Apes and then go back and see where it came from in Rise.
Right. Yeah, that would be difficult.
But I mean, that's why I keep watching Alien movies too, because like I'm interested in how the aliens came to be and what they're doing and why they're doing it, and each one is worse than the last, but I'm still gonna be there for it.
Same with Terminator.
Yeah.
It's guilty pleasure.
So speaking of Terminator, let's move on to the worst reboot. With Terminator Genisys.
You don't talk shit about that movie. Amelia Clark.
Which was a reboot of Terminator Salvation, which was a reboot from Terminator 3. Yeah, and then so Genisys was so bad that they had to reboot it and bring in Dark Fate and just be like, nah, fuck it. Nothing else actually counts except T1 and T2 and now Dark Fate. And I couldn't tell you, like the 2001 Planet of the Apes, I couldn't tell you a single thing that happened in Terminator Genisys. I know Amelia Clark is bad, and she's no Linda Hamilton. I will be here to cast aspersions on Amelia Clark until my last breath. Sorry, I hate her as an actress. She seems like a fine person, but I don't want to watch her in a movie ever. Sorry.
I just remember being pissed off the whole time.
The reveal of John Connor as Terminator is the other thing. As a Terminator is the other thing that I remember, and that's just atrocious.
And Jai Courtney can fucking piss off. He's terrible.
He's terrible. Jason Clarke. Like, Jason Clarke as John Connor is bad. I don't like Jason Clarke in anything.
I don't even know what the fuck else he's from.
He is like the third lead in a lot of stuff, and he's always bad.
Makes sense.
Yeah. I think we're at a point with the Terminator franchise that we just need to leave it alone. Like, the reason the first two worked so well is because no one had seen movies like either of them at the time of their respective releases. Now every other movie is a wannabe Terminator, and there's nothing that these movies can do to leave audiences in awe anymore. You know, when those first two came out, people had never seen this stuff done before in either of them. And so it was interesting to see what they could do with the technology of the time and the effects of the time. And now it's just not anymore. Like, there's robots in every single movie. There's there's time travel and aliens or whatever. Like, other movies do the same stuff, and a lot of them do it better than what Terminator has put out since Salvation, I would say. And I think at this point they've tried every permutation of how to increase the stakes in this world and how to build the lore out in the Skynet verse, and just nothing is sticking. So I think we just need to move on from it. Until we have actual robot actors that we can get to play Terminators, let's move on from the Terminator universe.
Well, I just think they were fucked from Jump Street, man, after 2, because you may not enjoy them. I can still watch them and think they're fun movies. Like, I enjoy the shit out of them.
I can watch Terminator 3. I can watch Salvation. I can watch Dark Fate. I like Dark Fate more than probably either of those other two. I cannot watch Genisys. It's
no. I'm not saying that. I'm saying T1 and T2 are still, in my opinion, fucking amazing movies. No, they're just so well written, so well directed. The cinematography's unreal. The acting's so dope. The sound effects, just everything. The storyline.
No, I completely agree with that.
It's all great, and
they're incredibly rewatchable, both of them. And
they could ever capture that again.
Exactly, that's the point I'm making. Is they need to stop trying because they can't do it again. And those two movies exist, and you can watch them whenever you want. So let's just
stick with those. Yeah. Let it pass. I mean, James Cameron probably can't do that much cocaine again and live.
No, he's too old for that.
He will
underwater
fucking croak.
filming avatars and whatnot.
Piss off with that fucking series. Blech. Hate. I argued.
When we come back to this in 10 years, we'll be able to just give all these awards to the Avatar franchise because they'll have all 5 movies by then. Maybe.
Fuck, I hope so. Bullshit ass.
What did you have for your worst reboot?
I went with some horror action, and I went with A Nightmare on Elm Street in 2010. after Watchmen, I had never really seen Jackie Earle Haley in anything, so I was really pumped to see him come out and play Freddy Krueger. I thought that was going to be awesome, and it was terrible. Everything about it was fucking terrible. Instead of just, okay, this is going to be really weird to say, but instead of a child murderer, he's a child molester, which for some reason in my mind or in like my gut, that just feels even more detestable.
Well, didn't he molest and murder them? I've seen the new one. I never saw the old ones.
I couldn't say off the top of my head. He just murdered kids he just fucking murdered kids in the old one. He was run-of-the-mill serial killer, but this feels a lot more malicious. Mm-hmm. And instead of just being a ethereal being, like not really defined, he's just a vengeful ghost. Like
I remember all that.
Who can just manifest, create mass out of fucking nothing. Like, what? It takes itself too seriously for you to suspend your disbelief.
Mm-hmm. I saw that when it came out. I'm not a big horror person, so I've never seen any of the classic ones. I don't like the idea of my dreams being used against me, and so like that's why I've never gone back, because I know the original ones are very good at showing that, and I could kind of tell that the new one wasn't going to be. Like I could tell from the trailers and all the marketing around it that this was not going to scare me. It wasn't going to bother me. It wasn't going to leave me up at night, and it didn't. And that's a bad horror movie if you can't do that to me, because I'm very easily scared. And like I could tell that it wasn't going to be, and I watched it because I figured that was a way to kind of get the ethos around Freddy Krueger without having to like fully dive into that old stuff that probably would scare me. And I did the same when they remade the Friday the 13th. I did the same thing with that one. And I watched that one first, and that's a little bit better as far as like a movie goes. It's not great, but it's a little bit better than that new Nightmare on Elm Street was, and that actually made me want to go back and watch the original Friday the 13th, and I did. And like I'm not going to camp, so that stuff didn't scare me. But I fall asleep and dream every night, so I can't avoid that, you know.
Yeah, they used to scare the fuck out of me when I was a kid.
And, the original Friday the 13th is better than the new one, but I think the new one has some merits as well.
Yeah, I agree. And I also
more
think
so than the Freddy Krueger does.
The classics benefited from the time.
Yeah, and the way they could build suspense. And now by 2010, when you're making these movies, you've seen all of these, suspense building tropes played out at this point. And so the same scares aren't going to work in a 2010 movie as did in a 1978 or whenever these first ones came out.
Yeah, shit don't fly. My wife's a huge fan of the original Nightmare on Elm Street series, so I've watched a lot. And like I said, I really think it boils down to the reboot took itself way too seriously. And I mean, even Freddy vs. Jason was better in my opinion, and that movie was hot garbage. They did show, a bunch of, I went and saw that with my grandpa once again. Man, I saw some weird shit with my grandpa. In my little, it was that or like Spy Kids 3. And I talked my grandpa into going to see that, and then just tits like the first fucking 2 minutes.
I read that somebody tweeted out the other day, it was like, the next time you're watching like an R-rated movie with your parents and there's a sex scene, to totally flip the balance of power, just like look at them and go, is this the type of freaky shit you guys are into? And get up and walk out of the room.
Ugh, gross.
I thought that was pretty funny. Like, could you imagine saying that to your grandfather watching Freddy vs. Jason in the first 10 minutes of that movie?
He would have whooped my ass. He'd been like, shut the fuck up.
That's why you walk out.
He would have caught me.
Grandpa, is this the type of freaky shit you like?
Gross.
Get out of here.
My brother would have been like, yeah, me too.
All right, so let's move on to the best overall franchise. What do you got?
Motherfucking Austin Powers.
This is a hot take if I've ever seen one.
This is a hot take. I was just driving along and it hit me like a ton of bricks. It was like, Austin Powers, because that movie redefined comedy for like 10 years. It also has infinite rewatchability. All three movies to a certain... I mean, the first and second movies are obviously better, but the third movie is still very good. It's got a great cast of characters. It launched several careers. It maximized several others. And, Mike Myers. I don't know what he prefers.
Yeah, he's Mike.
Mike.
He's not a murderer.
My boy Mike. I couldn't differentiate those two as a kid. Because I watched Austin Powers when I was young. My mom put that shit on the TV. I loved it. It's hilarious. But I was just like, how is this guy Michael Myers? It doesn't make any sense. Is that why he doesn't talk?
He's a super spy, and then at night he goes back to Haddonfield and murders teenagers? Is that what's going on here?
Is that what's up? He's hairy. Gross. But those movies
also grows like 8 inches.
Yeah, he's just huge and super strong. Well, I mean, the Chino chop makes sense. But I mean, Austin Powers was everywhere. And I think for a series to crank out 3 movies, basically from the mind of one guy playing multiple characters, that's really, really hard to do. And I think they brought it in for a landing. And you got some of the... I think without Austin Powers 3, Goldmember did some awesome shit. People realized Michael Caine's fucking hilarious. I don't give a shit what anybody says. He is funny in that movie. Beyonce, she's multi-talented. She's not just... I mean, she was still kind of... She wasn't, bae yet, or whatever people call her now.
Not quite. I believe she had already split from Destiny's Child. But it was early on in that. Yeah. She was dating Jay-Z already. But yeah, it was kind of the beginnings of Queen Bey coming up.
There you go. But I mean, she was super fine in that movie. Mike Myers was hilarious. Goldmember, honestly, if they would have just kept Dr. Evil and Fat Bastard, it would have been hilarious still. But I mean, the parts where he's just like fucking wrecking Mini-Me in that sack, I don't think I laughed harder in any of the other movies. Michael Caine is hilarious. Seth Green is, progressing into be taking his father's spot. And you got, I don't know, you got multiple facets. They brought more serious tones in with You're My Dad and You're My Brother, and as serious as that could possibly get.
I think they went a little off the radar there with the...
but it worked.
Everybody's related.
But it
worked as a joke.
It was hilarious. It was fucking hilarious. And let me say this. I don't think we would have got Tropic Thunder without Tom Cruise's Les Grossman in Tropic Thunder without Goldmember.
Maybe.
He was hilarious. And yeah, baby. Yeah. Kevin Spacey as fucking Dr. Evil. Danny DeVito as Mini-Me. That was hilarious. Oh, that was hilarious. I need to rewatch all those movies.
Yeah, I was watching 3 the other night, and it holds up for what it is. I don't know if it technically holds up. Like, if you showed that to somebody who's like 17 years old right now and has no history with these characters, or like the zeitgeist of the late 90s, early 2000s, they're going to be like, whoa, this is rough. But I think if you experience that, I think it holds up to an extent of like there are still funny parts. There are things that at the time we hadn't really seen before in comedies, like you said, and it definitely has its merits. I don't know that it's the best overall franchise ever.
Oh, dude, you're wrong. Best ever. I mean, it doesn't have gratuitous violence. It doesn't have nudity. It doesn't have any nudity.
No.
They hardly curse. Like, they hardly curse. So, the big go-getters, that's what sells. Sex and violence. They didn't really have that much of it. It was just, funny. And here's an interesting... I was talking to a couple coworkers, they listen to the show, and I was talking to them about what we were talking about today. And I mentioned that I thought the best franchise was Austin Powers, and this 21-year-old kid, and I think he's 67, they both cracked a line at the same time. Steve, the 67-year-old, goes, yeah, baby, yeah, as he's walking by, and then the 21-year-old is like, a bong and a blitz?
That
You know,
part was funny. The smoking a pancake is really funny.
smoking a pancake.
And then he would peel his skin off and try and eat it, and
So
it lost all of its
crispy.
humor.
Crispy.
All
Yes,
right,
very,
so
very
let's
fucking gross.
let's get back into the real world here, where Austin Powers is not the best franchise ever. I'm going to take us to a galaxy far, far away, because the Star Wars original trilogy is the best overall franchise. I think top to bottom, you would be hard pressed to find a better complete story told over multiple movies than the original trilogy. It's amazing to me what these three movies were able to pull off as far as the iconography of what space movies have taken from that, and there being space movies made in the late 70s and early 80s, and none of it feels stale even after 50 years. I mean, maybe little parts do, but most of it doesn't.
God,
And
just like that, 50 years.
Yeah,
that's insane.
And like the iconography of Star Wars still holds true. Like Darth Vader is widely known, the stormtroopers are widely known, the rebel insignia, if you show that to somebody, they might not know exactly what it is, but they'll know it's from Star Wars. Lightsabers are, the ubiquitous in the lexicon. Like, people know what they are even if they've never seen Star Wars. You know what a lightsaber is, you know what a Jedi is to some extent, you know who Darth Vader is, and all of this stuff has just stood for 50 years, and you can go back and watch any of these three movies and they're not stale in any way. And I think what really does it for the original trilogy is the masterful storytelling that we get.
So wonderful. It genuinely is fantastic.
And audience, just hold your jokes back about like Luke and Leia kissing, because I don't think little things like that really matter. Like, obviously George Lucas didn't have a fully formulated plan from A to Z on these three movies. And there are some little bumps in the road, but those don't matter because the way the overall story told is very important and masterfully done. We enter this world knowing absolutely nothing about it in the same way that Luke does, and the audience only gains knowledge as Luke gains knowledge. And so we get to learn about this huge world right along with one of these main characters. And I think that's what makes it so compelling to keep watching. A lot of movies, especially science fiction, fantasy movies, will like almost take a time out to dump exposition on viewers, so we know more than what the characters know. And they think, because those movies think that we won't be able to understand it if they just tell the story and have the character learn along the way, they have to take a break and tell us what's going on. And that's not really fair to audiences. Star Wars never does that. They never dumb it down for us. They give you a protagonist who knows some things, but overall he's naive to the greater world, and he's in just as much awe of this world as we are about all these new things that he's discovering. Episode 4, we learn that there's this vast world and a rebellion versus the Empire. We learn the Force exists and the Jedi are these people that once used it. And that's really it that we learn about that. And, most of that movie is just, it's about the mission of saving the princess and then destroying the Death Star. It's not world building necessarily. It's not lore building. And then episode 5, we get a little bit deeper into lore. We learn new details of the Force and how they use it. We learn really how far the Emperor's reach is and how powerful they are, and what happens when you get on their bad side. And then we learn Luke's connection to Darth Vader. And then episode 6 comes back and we learn even more. We learn what it means to be a Jedi. We learn what the Emperor truly wants and how powerful he truly is. And, what it's going to actually take for the rebellion to win. And most importantly, that no one is beyond redemption through the eyes of the Force. And just the pacing of the information that we're giving about this world is masterful. And I think it's what makes Star Wars so timeless, is they don't ever spoon feed you, but they don't ever overload you with information either. It's a slow burn. You learn as the movies go. Each movie builds on the previous one. You learn more lore. You learn more about the world. And at the end, the good guys defeat the bad guys. And it's just, you see the progression from A to Z. Even if all the, G and L might be out of place, it doesn't matter because the progression from A to Z is done so beautifully.
You kind of nailed it. I don't really think I can say much else in regards to that outside of just the casting. Casting was just so perfect.
And all unknowns at the time. I think I think Harrison Ford had done some very low level things.
Yeah, I think he had tried and was basically failing as an actor.
Yeah, he was a carpenter on the side as well, and like that's how he really met George Lucas, is he was like doing work on his home or his friend's home or something, and Lucas had him come in and interview for, or not interview, audition for the role.
Like,
But
hey, you're a good-looking dude. You wanna
yeah, come
be a
come be
space
a
cowboy?
rapscallion.
Yeah. You wanna be a space cowboy? I mean, that sounds pretty cool.
And so I rewatch the original trilogy every 3 years. That is something I was taught by How I Met Your Mother, is you have to watch every 3 years, just to kind of keep it fresh. And so this is now the third rotation since I had my first daughter. And so the first time I watched it, uh, with her being around, it was 2015. She watched it with me, but she wasn't really aware of it. She was less than one. And then so we watched it again in 2018. She's 4 at this point, 3 or 4 at this point. And like she started to watch, she probably watched like the first 20 minutes and like, I'm not watching this, and went on and did other things.
She's like, bye.
This time we just started the other day. She's actually watching it with me, and she's like kind of into it. She's pretty interested. We're having to watch it in parts because we're watching it like before she goes to bed, so we get like 45 minutes a night. So we're most of the way through episode 4 right now. We got to finish it tomorrow night. And but she seems like she's actually interested to see what happens next.
I wish my excuse me. I wish my child would watch Star Wars. That'd be amazing.
Yeah,
The
it's hard. Like you gotta get it at the right time. And like I said, because I watch it every 3 years, I just kind of offer it out there. And last time they were like, yeah, let's watch Star Wars, because we had some of the toys and things like that. And they started watching it, and it just didn't catch with them. They're just like, this isn't interesting. So they went off and did something else, and I ended up watching them on my own at a different time. But she was like, well, what's Princess Leia doing? Where's Rey? Does Rey come up in this one? I'm like, no, we got to get all the way to 7, but first we got to go from 4 to 6, and then you go back to 1 to 3, and then you finally get to 7. She's like, is this Baby Yoda? I'm like, no, Baby Yoda's in a different show, and that's kind of a grown-up show. You're not really ready for that. And, well, what about this thing and this thing? And she's like asking questions and learning about it. So it's been really cool this last time to like kind of really engage with her on it.
Yeah, that sounds pretty fun.
All right, so what is your worst overall franchise?
Worst overall franchise is The Hobbit.
That's a good pick.
Dude, fuck The Hobbit. Every one of these movies is fucking dumb. They're bloated, unnecessary. The dialogue is fucking atrocious. The CGI is ancient. The character design sucks my fucking left nut. And legitimately is terrible. And the franchise is zero fun. I fucking hate it.
I liked The Desolation of Smaug, or parts of it. I remember watching The Desolation of Smaug and being ready for the Battle of the Five Armies. And then I turned on Battle of Five Armies, and I'm like, okay, this is shitty again. Cool.
Yeah, what is this hot bag of garbage?
So I don't know if I don't remember if the whole Desolation of Smaug movie like kept me interested, or if it was just like the last 20-25 minutes.
It was just Benedict Cumberbatch.
Yeah, it probably was. But by the end of it, I was like, I got to see what happens next. And then I turned on the next one, and I was like, okay, cool, I'm done.
Like, I don't like this.
Yeah, no.
Not a fan.
That's a very good pick.
Yeah, I don't really need to get too much deeper into it.
No,
they lost me
within
the first 40 minutes of the first movie because of the dwarves' design. It's like, what the fuck? Why did these 2 guys look human? Or 3 guys they just look human, and then these other guys look cartoonishly stupid.
Because Peter Jackson thought it was unnecessary too, and completely mailed it in.
100%. You could tell after getting The Lord of the Rings. It's just like, what is going on here?
Yeah.
What kind of hot garbage is this?
All right, so my worst overall franchise was Divergent.
Never watched them. I heard they're
bad.
Atrocious, though.
It's very bad. Shailene Woodley is not good. This was by far the worst of all the YA novels turned into movie franchises that try to piggyback off Harry Potter. And that's saying something, because like Percy Jackson and the Lightning Thief exist, and they made 2 of those 7 books into movies and just gave up. Divergent made all of their books into movies, and it's all bad. Somehow they continued. I'm pretty sure the last movie wasn't even released in theaters, and
Was it released at all?
Yeah, I believe they have finished whatever the book stories were. I think they made movies for all of them. I lost interest after like the second one, and each movie kind of got progressively worse. I think I definitely watched at least the first three. I might have watched the fourth because my wife had read all the books. Um, but yeah, I don't know how this fell so hard so fast because the state of these movies like 3 years earlier was everybody wanted these YA dystopian future type stories. And this one just, I think this killed the whole idea of YA dystopian futures. Like
Man,
nobody wanted it anymore after this.
it's that fucking bad, huh?
I guess. I mean, it's got some talent behind it. Like Miles Teller's in it. People think Shailene Woodley is talented. Like there's good actors throughout this
Isn't that
series.
Aaron Rodgers' girl?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, okay. Somewhat familiar with her.
Yeah, I don't like her very much. But yeah, it was bad.
It's fucking terrible.
All right, so let's move on to the best cliffhanger for a sequel that never came. I go first here with The Amazing Spider-Man #2.
That's also what I picked.
It set the scene for what could have been a really great next installment. You know, Spider-Man's going against the escaped Rhino. It's just a really great scene to end on because there's so much more to what this movie left hanging. It's not just that battle that we need to see play out because that battle really doesn't matter. You know, Peter, he's coming back from the brink after Gwen's death. Was he really going to be the same after dealing with that? Was the Sinister Six actually going to make an appearance? And what would that have looked like? Would they have meshed well together or would they have squabbled with each other? Would they be powerful enough to actually like give Spider-Man a run for his money? I don't know. What's going on with Peter's parents? Because they keep kind of dropping these breadcrumbs of Peter's parents are up to some shit in these movies.
Yeah, not good shit.
Yeah, there was just so much more that this series wanted to tell us, and I wanted to know it all because, again, I love the world building around this stuff, and I think that's probably what actually killed the Amazing Spider-Man franchise is they had too many balls in the air at one time. I thought it was all awesome, but...
it was not a good movie.
No, it's not a very good movie, but I liked the ideas behind, like the ideas that they were throwing out there for things to come and the breadcrumbs that they were laying. I wanted to learn more about those things. They stuffed too many of them into one movie, but I thought they were potentially going in some cool directions.
I agree 100%. And my exact notes were, even though I hated this movie and I hated the design of Rhino and Paul Giamatti's fucking accent, I wanted to see this so damn bad.
I love Paul Giamatti as the Rhino. He's going for it, man.
I love it, dude. I love it, but I hate it. I love it, but I hate it. It's like...
It's great.
Yeah, it's something like you can't look away
he
from the accent's
in a Fast
terrible.
And Furious movie. Like I want to see that crossover. Like Rhino needs to be going up against Dom and the family in the next movie.
Dom would just like jump him
in that Rhino suit. I want to see it.
That'd be sick.
Universal, I know you're listening. Make it happen.
A Transformers crossover, and he's all of a sudden fist fighting with a giant Rhino suit.
Perfect. Let's do it. Write it up. Give me all the money in the world.
It's on. We'll make
as Tyrese becomes the Green Lantern because they go back into space. Only in Fasten Your Seatbelts.
Fasten Your Seatbelts in space.
In theaters. July 5th, 2023.
In space theaters. That's where the family is.
Yeah, the only thing that I'm happy that we didn't get to see was Shailene Woodley as Mary Jane. Like, I don't know that I would have been able to hold on to that.
She's popping up in a lot of yours.
But I don't like her.
She was supposed to be Mary Jane Watson?
Yeah, they had shot scenes with her, but they got cut.
Good.
Yeah, she would have been bad. Alright, so worst cliffhanger then. I went with Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull.
Really?
Yeah. I know we're technically about to get another Indiana Jones movie, but it doesn't appear to be connected to at least Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, because Kingdom of the Crystal Skull left it up for Shia LaBeouf to take over the fedora and the whip, and I don't think the world was going to let that happen.
Nah, he wasn't going to let that shit happen. He's a sabotager if I've ever seen one.
Well, I mean, he had some alcohol issues and drug issues.
He just has some issues.
I love Shia. He's great. This wasn't going to be it for him. I'm really happy with the type of stuff that he's doing now, and it's probably best that this franchise didn't continue with him in it, because you could see it in Transformers. Like, his heart wasn't in it. Like, I think he liked doing the first one, and then the other ones he was just like, nah, fuck this. And so if he'd gotten tagged on to another soul-crushing franchise that's already going into Aliens in their fourth installment, like, I don't think it would have taken for him. He would have had a hard time with that.
He would be probably dead. I could totally see that, as harsh as that is to say.
What did you have for a worst cliffhanger?
Worst cliffhanger. I had Terminator Genesis.
See, I don't even remember the cliffhanger from that.
So everybody lives, and Skynet still survives in an underground protected area. Go figure. Fucking blow me. Blow me. You just gave me 2 hours of the shittiest fucking movie that you could possibly put to screen. Charged me $30 for 2 people.
You went to a theater to see Genesis?
I went to a theater to see it.
Oh.
It was like $37 for me and my wife. And that's the only reason I didn't leave, is because, like, I fucking paid for this. I'm watching the whole thing. I'm such an ignorant asshole sometimes. But I was just mad. I was just mad the whole time. It ruined my fucking day.
It's so
lie.
bad.
Ruined
I watched it
my
at home
fucking
in the
day.
comfort of my home, and I was still mad that I wasted time on it.
Ruined my goddamn day. We were on like a date night, and when I get really like pissy, like it happens.
Yeah,
I just kind of.
It's not gonna be a good date night after that.
No, it just infects everyone around me. And
Well, so I expected it to be bad because Emilia Clarke was in it, and I was just like, "There's no way this is gonna be good. She's not good."
I was still on her train, I was still in her corner, and then she did that to me.
Like, even Solo. Like, I like Solo as a movie, but she's not. Like, I don't like anything she does.
She's not good. No, she's not good.
I like every part of Solo other than her, and like that's kind of shitty to say, but like she doesn't do it for me.
Donald Glover, so good in that movie.
Yeah, he's good in everything. All right, so let's move to the best franchise ending. How they wrapped up the franchise. Very important here. What do you got?
I chose The Return of the King of the Lord of the Rings series.
Good choice.
Being the only gripe I would have is they didn't have the Battle of the Shire or whatever from the books, but the ending was fantastic.
Plus that movie ended 18 times, so you got several endings.
Yeah, basically. But I mean, they did such a great. You bow to no one. Like, that is such a great line. It was an awesome way to end the movie, and then to see how everyone kind of lives their life, or at least Frodo and Sam. Who gives a fuck about Merry and Pippin? They can fuck off. But you learn kind of how the rest of the Fellowship goes on. So I think that's pretty fucking awesome. And to finish with, like I said, with Austin Powers, I really wanted to put Lord of the Rings, as the best franchise, but the ending was much better.
We could have had the Clerks 2 argument if you'd done that.
Fuck my life. Clerks 2 sucks. They're making a Clerks 3. They're filming it in like 2 weeks.
No, I just mean that's the argument that Randall has in Clerks 2 with like that one customer. They argue Star Wars versus Lord of the Rings.
Lord of the Rings, 100%.
Star Wars.
Let's
walk for more. Let's just keep walking. Walk. Oh, here's a tree. Let's walk with the trees now.
You don't get it. So good.
I like Lord of the Rings. I need to rewatch it. I've never read the books, so like the only recollection I have is the first time I saw Fellowship of the Ring in theaters and walked out halfway through because it was just walking for an hour and a half, and there was still another hour and a half left of the movie, and I wasn't there for that shit.
Damn. My dad felt the same way. He hated that shit. He paid someone to take me so we wouldn't have to go.
Well, then, so when I rewatched it, because I was in this in my English 101 composition class, the teacher really liked the Lord of the Rings and like the Lord of the Rings movies, and he was like really talking about how great the movies are, and they start off as a slog, but like just how perfect they are at storytelling in the same way I was just talking about Star Wars, and he was going on and on about it, and I was like, I should really give them another chance. I'm just gonna make it through that first hour and a half, and then it sounds like this stuff is really cool, And I eventually did that, and that everyone's right. Like, they're great movies. It's just that first hour and a half of Fellowship of the Ring is boring AF.
See, I'm kind of biased because it had me the first 35 seconds of the movie. That opening scene.
The opening scene is really great.
Going along that line of swordsmen, the elvish swordsmen as they in sync kind of bring up their weapons, and
I'll agree that the first scene is dope. But then the next, so after the first 3 minutes, the next hour and a half is not dope.
I was willing to give hard disagree. Had tension.
13-year-old me was bored out of my mind in a movie theater.
I could see that. I mean, I was young enough, and it was just something I really enjoyed. And I just started reading the books, and don't get me wrong, the books are great for what they are. They're hella dry. Just like, A Song of Ice and Fire can be incredibly dry at times, and sometimes the show did things better than the novel. I think the ending did things better than the novel. Like, it was contrite. It was good. I enjoyed it. I think it was the best franchise ending that you could have possibly had. And as a whole, as a beginning, middle, and end, that last installment of that franchise was out of this world. And they wrapped up pretty much everything you could possibly want really well.
I'm not here to disagree with you. I think you're right. But I'm also going to disagree with you. Because my best franchise ending was Ocean's 13.
That's a good pick, dude.
I love the Ocean's movies so much.
Yes.
Each movie is perfect in its own unique way, and Ocean's 13 doesn't really disappoint in that venue. Each of the Ocean's movies, I think, could have finished the series out properly and tied everything together nicely, but Ocean's 13 kind of goes above and beyond that. Like, Ocean's 11 ends on a good note. Everybody gets their money. Everybody's happy. Terry Benedict gets screwed over. Great. Ocean's 12 comes back. They steal the egg. They prove they're the best heist team. The Night Fox gets screwed over. Great. Everybody's happy. Good. End of the series. Nope. Now we're going to do Ocean's 13. Not only did they get their money that they were after, or like the diamonds or whatever it was, which you at least need in a heist franchise, but they also get revenge on Al Pacino for screwing over Ruben, and they make fools out of all of their past enemies as well. So it's not just Al Pacino. They go after Terry Benedict and screw him over again. They go after the Night Fox and screw him over again. They screw over the cougar lady that works for Al Pacino. And then they help out some people who help them along the way. They rig that little slot machine for the reviewer that got screwed out of his room earlier, and they put bed bugs on him and all that shit, so he gets a happy ending. It's just so much fun to watch them get away with all of this and leave everybody else in complete shambles.
Isn't it?
It really was.
It's like, you fucking suckers.
I still remember the first time I watched Ocean's 13. I was in the house I lived in. It was junior year of college. I was watching it on my little ass 20-inch TV with the built-in DVD player. Might have been 27-inch. And I'm watching it, and as soon as it ended, my first thought was, they just absolutely owned every other person in this movie that's not in their crew, and it's awesome.
And I'm here for it.
Yeah. And I think at this point in that franchise, that's the only thing that they could have done better than the previous two movies, is there's no way to up the stakes because they've stolen everything. And there's only so much you can steal and continue to be interesting. So the next thing you have to add to it is to steal for somebody, leave them in shambles, and then the last step to add on to that is you steal from someone and leave just everything in your wake demolished. That's not you and your crew. And they did it.
Right, and just walk away scot fucking free.
Yeah. Good job, Ocean's 13. Bad job, Ocean's 8. You almost qualified for the worst reboot, Ocean's 8.
The cinephile friend of mine that I've talked about a couple times, he almost gets violent when he talks about that movie.
It's so bad.
It's so fucking bad.
I don't think it's worse than Terminator Genisys. The thing about Ocean's 8 is they had all the pieces. All of the actresses they got are incredibly talented, and they're all good at something, but they had them each doing something that they're not good at, and it just, nothing worked in it.
Yeah, I'm not gonna watch it ever.
You shouldn't. All right, so what do you have for your worst franchise ending? Is it Ocean's 8? It should be Ocean's 8.
Nope, it's Blade Trinity.
Come on, Ryan Reynolds, Jessica Biel?
Fuck that movie, dude. That was so dumb. Let me just say this. How the fuck are you going to have a movie where... So they released... It kills Dracula, the first vampire. Doesn't kill Blade because he's half human, so his heart slowed down just enough that he basically goes into hibernation. All the other vampires are basically dead, and then he wakes up and he's just like, hey, let's hunt some goddamn vampires. Fuck off with that shit. That movie was terrible.
We can't kill Blade. He's the Daywalker.
Yeah, you could just retire that motherfucker. Why don't you go become a private PI? You'd be great at it.
Him and Jessica Jones out there hunting people down.
Yeah, that's exactly what we need. Another sex scene between Jessica Jones and Blade.
I mean, sure, why not?
That'd be some crazy ass offspring.
I went with Star Wars Episode 9, The Rise of Skywalker. And the reason it's the worst is because I wanted it to be good. Everyone wanted it to be good. And it has some, very few, redeeming qualities. And there are some things, there's a good story somewhere in that movie. It's just not anything that they put on screen. And
the movie was shit, dude.
I mean, we've talked enough about it, so I'm not going to sit here and trash too much on it, just like because that's been done to death, and we've even talked about. We did a whole episode on this movie right after it came out. It's just incredibly disappointing how bad it ended up being, and it could have been so easy to finish this series off on a good note. Even if you don't make the best movie ever, there are a million ways that you could have ended the sequel trilogy satisfyingly. And
yeah, even just remotely satisfying.
Yeah. And I don't think there's any one thing that you could point to that is the cause of the disjointed mess of what this movie became. I think every individual contributor, excluding the actors, because all the actors are phenomenal in all three of these movies, every other individual contributor is somehow to blame in some small way or another. And the biggest issue with it is that they tried to somewhat tell the story they wanted to tell, but they also tried to take into account angry fanboy reactions to the previous two movies. And that's always going to be an issue because no two angry fanboys have the same issues. They tried to half-ass address each of them and also tell a story where those criticisms don't actually matter, which is what they should have done, is just tell the story they want to tell and not worry about whatever the criticisms of the past two movies were. You're never going to go out there and please everybody. So you have to try to at least please someone. And that should probably be the creators of the movie. And this movie spent so much time trying to please everyone that it just pleased no one. Like, it didn't do anything good for anyone. I'm one of the biggest Star Wars apologists out there. I can find something good to say about every piece of Star Wars media that exists. I can defend it in some way. And just because I love this world and I love everything that's been built around it, and it's very hard for me to find redeeming qualities to defend Rise of Skywalker. And I think that's a problem. When you can't get the support of your biggest apologists, the people who are always there to ride for you, who are always the ones arguing against whatever these dumb, angry fanboys say, when they're even like, yeah, they should have done something better, that's a problem.
Yeah. You remember how pissed off I was when I went and saw that?
Yeah. I mean, I didn't leave pissed off because, like, I saw the bones within it of like, what they could have done. And I'm like, yeah, I'm just going to kind of take those pieces and put them in my mind together and be like, that's going to be my story. And I'll leave out the dumb bullshit. And it's very hard to defend. Like, I can defend Attack of the Clones. I can defend Phantom Menace. I can defend any other movie. I can defend any book that I've read. I can defend any of the cartoons. I have a hard time defending Rise of Skywalker. And if I watched it again, I would find some things to defend in it. I just don't know that's worth my energy right now.
2 weeks later, and then you'd be like, you know what, fuck that, I don't even care anymore.
In 2 more years, when I get to, so the way I've split it up is I just do a trilogy every year. I do original trilogy, then I'll do prequel trilogy, then I'll do sequel trilogy. So in 2 years, when I get back to the sequel trilogy, maybe I'll have a little more hope in it, or just be able to turn my brain off, because going in, I'll know it's bad, kind of like I did with Genesis, right? Like, I know it's bad, so I won't be expecting too much, and I'll just be able to kind of take it for what it is. Maybe. We'll see.
I wish you the best of luck, good sir.
I'll let you know. In 2 years, we'll be back to tell you how that rewatch went.
I mean, I'll rewatch it with you.
All right, so we're on to our final segment of our Movie Superlatives episode, and that is What Would You Do? Nick, what franchise do you never want to die?
The Avengers.
Yeah, I don't think that's going anywhere, so you're lucky there.
That's honestly, I really, really thought about it as best I could. I was like, what franchise do I never genuinely want to die? I want to pick animated movie. Initially, I wanted to pick the My Hero Academia movie franchise, but it's mostly a show. And then I just landed on the Avengers. As long as I keep getting an ensemble comic book movie every couple years, I'm a fucking happy man.
They do such a good job of telling different stories, and the way, coming from the world of comic books and the world of Marvel Comics, they're never going to run out of stories to tell, and they're never going to run out of new characters to introduce. If Shang-Chi doesn't work out and it's just a bad movie, boom, they move on. They bring in somebody new. They make Moon Knight jump from Disney Plus to they give him a movie now. They do things like that. There's always another character to throw in, and there's always something more to do. And if you get far enough away from it, you bring in an alternate timeline version of Tony Stark where now we have a different actor playing that role, or you bring in Riri Williams, or you do something like that. There's infinite possibilities of what they can do in that universe, and I don't see a way that it dies other than just people get
bored,
absolutely sick with it.
I don't see that happening either.
And so I think Star Wars Star Wars isn't my pick, but I think Star Wars could have positioned itself to be the same way. There's an infinite galaxy far, far away that they could have literally done anything in, but they kept coming back to these Skywalkers, and I think they're eventually going to move beyond it. And even like their spin-offs, Rogue One had to tie into leading right into A New Hope. Solo, we had to tell the story of Han Solo instead of telling something else. Even like The Mandalorian, that was its own thing for most of the first season, and then the second season took all this time to go meet Ahsoka, tie it back in, which I loved it when he met Ahsoka, and that was dope as hell. But like they keep bringing it back to these old properties instead of like, let's expand the world, let's see what's out there, because you have infinite possibilities of things you can do, and what they're doing with the High Republic novels and comics right now is they're starting to do that. These are all new characters. They're all new things. Like the only being that we know that's alive at the time of the High Republic and that's in, any of the Skywalker series is Yoda. And they always just kind of like half mention Yoda. They're like, oh, yeah, Master Yoda says this, but I don't like doing it that way. And they're exploring all these new and different ways to use the Force, because these Jedi back in the High Republic days weren't afraid to like just try shit out with the Force. They're just like, I bet I could do that. And then they try it, and if it works, it works, and if it doesn't, it doesn't, and they kind of rework and do something else. And I think that's really cool, and they need to take that out of novels and bring it into movies and into TV shows rather than just constantly tying back to, well, let's go to Tatooine, let's go to Naboo, let's do these things, let's tie it to the things people know so that way they know what's going on. And I don't know that they need that. Yeah.
No, we don't need it. I'm sick of it.
And I think Marvel's finally figuring that out, is we don't have to tie these things. Like Guardians of the Galaxy proved that for them, is we don't have to have a big name hero in these movies.
Right. But as long as the Avengers are some of the best of all of them, which you could easily fuck those up being an ensemble movie. It wouldn't be hard, but at the same time, if you do it right, you do it fucking right.
Yeah. And I mean, I think we're going to further see that with Shang-Chi, with the Eternals. We're going to see that, like, you don't have to tie everything back to Tony Stark or Captain America. Like, these characters can exist on their own, and then if they need to all come together, great. If they don't, then we'll leave them out. But they can still exist. So I think I don't see the MCU going anywhere anytime soon.
No, it's not happening.
My actual pick for what franchise I never want to see die is the Fast and Furious, obviously.
Yeah, I kind of figured.
It's gotten to the point where it's completely beyond parody, and I think that's what makes it so enjoyable. They know what they are at this point. They keep coming back for more. They bring in more characters. They do crazier stunts. It's always watchable.
It's literally Austin Powers, but with cars.
Yeah,
and Vin Diesel.
Not
muscles.
Quite the same type of humor.
Well, yeah, but it's same vein.
Yeah, and they know what they are. They show up. They do it. People want to see it, and so people see it. You never go to a Fast and Furious movie and you walk out and just be like, that was shit. You never walk out and say that was the greatest movie ever. But they have found their niche in the middle of the road as this action movie that people can just go see and watch stuff blow up.
Yeah, you turn your brain off.
Yeah. F9 was the least watchable entry I think that I've seen in a while, just because it was a little too bloated and it almost 2.5 hours long. Like, we just don't need that in these movies. Give us 2 hours, give us 3 or 4 car stunts that we've never seen before, 20 mentions of family, 10 mentions of Corona. We're going to be good. You know, no one needs to try too hard here. Clearly no one does, so let's keep it that way. Just pump them out. Yeah.
Yeah, just give me more.
It does look like there's probably only going to be 2 more entries in the main series here. Hobbs and Shaw spinoff looks like that's going to keep going a little bit. There's a rumored Cypher spinoff with Charlize Theron's character. That may live beyond this as well. The only thing I have to hope is that in these last 2 entries, or there might be more, but it seems like it's really just going to be 2, is that, you know, The Rock comes back. He gets back on the team for one last movie. You got to bring him back, even though Tyrese hates him and Dwayne and fucking Vin Diesel hates him.
Hates him.
That's fine. We got to get The Rock in just for one last movie, and they need to team up against Charlize Theron's character and Idris Elba's character. Like, I want those 2 to be the big bad of the final movie. Those 2 would be a formidable force together.
Hell yeah.
And the last thing I need from it, I know it's bad to say this, I think Brian has to at least be at the barbecue at the end. You get one small scene with his brothers as stand-ins like they did for Furious 7. You know, I don't need him in the whole movie. I don't need him doing any stunts. Just at the table at the barbecue. He's got a Corona. He says grace for one last time. I think Paul Walker's ghost is going to be happy with that.
I would hope. It's one of the better send-offs you could get.
Yeah, and in F9, spoilers, if anyone gives a shit, and it's not really a spoiler, like, they're all sitting at the table doing the barbecue like they do at the end of every movie, and like, Dom looks at Mia and is like, oh, is Brian coming? I thought he was coming. And she's like, oh yeah, he'll be here, he's running late. And then the last thing we see is his blue Skyline, like, pulling up to Dom's house, but like, he doesn't get out, and it just shows his car. And I'm like, that's what we should expect from, like, Brian's involvement in this thing, because we can't just forget that he's there because they didn't actually kill him. But I think we also need, like, we need a real, I would want to see Brian at that last barbecue.
I think that would really bring it home.
Yeah. Of, like, this is really the end. We made sure we brought him back. We did it in a good way. We're not coming back to this. Dom's not coming back. Tyrese isn't coming back. Tej isn't coming back. Like, everybody's gone. This is it.
It's fucking over.
The Rock can do what he wants in Hobbs and Shaw, but that shit doesn't matter.
Pretty much. It's fucking over.
It's over. Like Vince Carter in the 2000 Slam Dunk Contest.
Over.
Just like this show after next week.
About to be over.
Yeah, you got anything else on franchises before we close this one out? Our final movie superlatives.
I do not.
All right, me neither. We talked them to death. We've killed all these franchises.
To death.
Some of them we murdered. Some of them died of old age. And thank you for listening. You can follow us on Twitter if you have any thoughts about how franchises ended. That's at APA something and at alone_podcast. As I've mentioned several times, next week is our last official episode here. There may be one-off times where we come back in the future. We haven't figured that out yet, but next week is the series finale of a podcast about something. We're going to be doing a clips show of a podcast about something where Nick and I will be playing clips from old episodes and trying to guess which episode they came from. We'll have a list in front of us so we can kind of tell. And we're going to try and guess, and whoever gets the most right gets to take home forever the podcast about something trophy. I got a real trophy. I'll tweet out a picture sometime.
I'm pumped to see this trophy. I want it.
It's a fucking good trophy too.
I bet.
So yeah, we're gonna that'll be next week. You can follow us on Twitter for more info. That's at APA something at alone_podcast. I think I already said that, but that's fine. As for our next projects, I will be moving on to the Magic Number is 3 when it comes to TV podcast, and that is where we break down season 3s of different TV shows throughout history. Me and my friend Chris will be doing that. That will start mid-August. There's a couple episodes out there like introducing the show and introducing the first show that we're doing a season 3 for, which is Breaking Bad. So you can head over to that stream right now and kind of hear those intro episodes there. That's the Magic Numbers 3 or the Magic Numbers 3 when it comes to TV. You could type in either. You'll find it on your favorite podcast app. And Nick, why don't you tell the listeners a little bit about You Are All Alone?
Epic science fiction narrative podcast. It's super dope. We're about to drop episode 45.
Damn.
So lots of content out there for you. If you like a science fiction tale of, swords and steel and blood and violence and all that good shit, check it out.
Start at episode 1. Don't do like I did when I first found out about Nick and his show and start at like episode 13. Doesn't make sense. Got to start at 1.
It doesn't make any sense. And what I did for these folks is I went ahead and I made a compilation episode. So the first episode in that feed should be a compilation of the first 8 episodes.
Boom.
So 2.5 hours, you're all good to go.
Nice. All right. So thank you everyone for listening. Thank you to those cats for providing all the music for a podcast about something. We're going to see you next week for our series finale. But until then,
You gotta stay sassy.
Stay classy.